The Wedgwood Museum, Stoke-on-Trent, was announced as the Art Fund Prize winner for 2009 at this year's event at the Royal Institute of British Architects in London. Sky Arts spoke to the winners and judges about what marked them out and takes a look back at the other 9 long-listed museums and galleries.
It was a tough decision. There's no question it was a very, very tough decision. But if I open the envelope, there was only one winner. And the winner is, as it happens, the same winner that was the winner of the Guardian's online People's Choice poll. It is the Wedgwood Museum.
You can only guess what this means to Stoke-on-Trent. This is the culmination of 10 years of work for so many, many people. Those people who helped to fund the project, the HLF and our local regional development agency, and lots of individual people who gave support and help to make this happen. A small number of volunteers who worked their butts off for hours and hours on end to do things that the staff couldn't do because it's so small a staff. And then the staff who've never done anything like this before in their lives and spent 10 years of their lives producing this fantastic museum. And how lucky we are to have received this prize. It'll do so much for what we've tried to do in Stoke-on-Trent and tried to do in the memory of a fantastic Great Britain, Josiah Wedgwood. Thank you very much, and thank you, the Art Fund, for all the work they do and for taking the effort and the trouble and the time to look at what we've tried to achieve. Thank you very much.
The museum is very much part of the community. Everybody in North Staffordshire has somebody who's worked in the ceramic industry, and this is a way of really celebrating that and getting over to them that we have this award-winning international museum on their doorsteps.
This is right in the heartland of deprivation and problems. So it's a marvellous flag to put in the ground to say, look, it's never over till it's over. The fat lady hasn't sung for the potteries, number one. Secondly, when you look at Britain's history as a creative nation, Wedgwood and the Wedgwood Museum is the creative industries, as we call them, very large. I mean, this is design, meets manufacturing, meets craft, meets extremely effective commerce. I mean, they were good at selling their products as well. This is all the stuff we really did well. So if you like, the Wedgwood Museum is a story of the triumph and tragedy of British industry over the last 200 years.
I can't tell you how thrilled we are to be taking that prize back to North Staffordshire. It's going to make the world of difference to a very small museum team, which are very dedicated.
Housed in a striking contemporary building designed by local architects Hume Upright Manning on the historic manufacturing site of Josiah Wedgwood and Sons Limited, the new Wedgwood Museum celebrates the art of ceramics at its finest. The museum is dedicated to the people who have made objects of great beauty from the soil of Staffordshire and celebrates the universally famous Wedgwood name.
The Museum Trust decided that very early on, with the completion of the museum in October last year, that it really was of a world class. The exhibition, we believe, is very stunning and different. The new building is one of the great flagships of North Staffordshire, and we felt that the Art Fund Prize was an ideal opportunity to flag up what has been done here and also the excellence and diversity of the collections. The focus of the Wedgwood Museum is in fact the people who made the pots. Everybody's heard of Wedgwood, everybody has probably got a piece of Wedgwood in their houses, but this gallery really explores the innovation, the technology, the people, and also looks at the way in which the commerce, fashion, taste and connections all interrelate, looking at the pots in the social context of the home and also as a business.
The idea of a designer, it was a relatively new thing at this point,
yes,
as opposed to a craftsman and a kind of tradition that was developed. The idea of self-consciously designing for a market.
That looks from the 1920s, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, what is it? It's
1815.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a century before its time.
Being nominated has been the most enormous excitement for everybody. We're a small team of both professionals, trustees and volunteers. And the moment we heard the news, the excitement was just electric. It's also had a great impact. We're beginning to get a lot of Art Fund members coming through to see it due to the publicity in their magazine. But also the local publicity has meant that people are coming also to see what's on their doorstep. And it's meant that we have attracted a much bigger audience in the last few weeks than we perhaps would have done. We don't normally expect to see a lot of visitors till Easter.
What impresses me is that they've given precedence to the objects. And, as a potter myself, I want to see the pots. That's what I really come here to see. And so they haven't kind of compromised it with too much gimmickry. And yet there's also all the backstory. I mean, you see the history of Britain here reflected in the history of Wedgwood. So you see he was the kind of Bill Gates of his day in many ways. He's amazingly innovative, not just in ceramic production, but in marketing and the way he kind of tapped into the kind of cultural and intellectual life of his age.
The building behind me was actually subject to a European-wide open competition and happily was won by an architectural firm based in Staffordshire, which was a marvellous move. And the whole idea of this curved front is the fact that it is based on the traditional bottle oven, which is disappearing rapidly from the landscape of the county. And what is nice is that curving form goes into the inside displays, which were created by Ivor Heel Design. And so you've got this juxtaposition of the building and the interior displays marrying together as a united whole.
I think the big win here is the depth of this collection, the manner in which it's been displayed, and the fact that it's such a fundamental component of employment in this region, both historically and indeed, please God, for the future. So this is a museum which both celebrates, exemplifies, and maybe will be the inspiration for the industrial future of this region.
The Mid-Antrim Museum at the Braid enables visitors to discover the past and understand the present, particularly how certain key events in Irish history continue to shape aspects of contemporary cultural and political identity in Northern Ireland.
Good morning.
Artefacts of local and national significance are shown alongside interactive displays highlighting the history of the region. The aim is to reflect how local stories are part of larger stories.
What we've tried to do really with through the interpretive approach is to tell the story of Mid-Antrim within its wider context. In essence, that can be summarised as a recognition that the local story is inevitably part of a much larger story. So we've tried to, within the gallery, sort of provide opportunities for people to make connections between sort of local and national and even international events. We're also we're exploring issues to do with identity in Northern Ireland, and particularly how history, in a sense, continues to underpin aspects of contemporary political and cultural identity. In a way, it's the uses of history within society. We're interested in a way, what is remembered and by whom and why and when.
It's a radical move. It's a big investment, but the impact it can have on the community, either because they're coming in here or because the museum is reaching out to them, or the whole centre is reaching out to them. Is they're pretty emphatic about that.
Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum, longlisted for the Art Fund Prize for the second time, is the UK's most visited museum outside London and displays over 8,000 objects relating to art, science, history and natural history. The Centre of New Enlightenment is a programme of educational events and experiences that begin with a cinematic and handheld computer tour for young people at Kelvingrove. The aim is to use the unique museum environment, and in particular its collections, staff and spaces, to inspire young people to achieve success in their lives. The project has been funded with the help of a £5 million donation from the Hunter Foundation.
So the focus of the gallery is an explicit attempt to engage young people, many of whom normally wouldn't engage with museums at all, in a way that's much deeper than the traditional museum visit.
I haven't been to this gallery before, in this museum, so I thought it was absolutely fantastic in terms of its architecture and its history. And then to see the young people, first of all, respond to the challenges that they were set, which was interesting. But for me, it came to life when I actually took part in the 4 challenges. And I thought that was fantastic.
Robbie Burns.
Robbie Burns.
Burns was happening, he was streets, and he was where he was at.
There's something about having a PDA which you have to interact with, which you look at, you listen to, and then also you're looking at an object at the same time. Things like find the Robert Burns statue. So we didn't know where to go at all. And as time goes on, it tells you, well, if you're not looking this, you're not looking that way, you're not in the right place. So it was kind of a bit of a hunt. That was quite fun. When we got to the Robert Burns statue, it started telling us about who this person was and what he wrote and how he wrote it, and then asked us to question ourselves about how different are we.
Every child needs the opportunity to question. That's why it's called the Centre of New Enlightenment, because it mirrors the Enlightenment, the Great Enlightenment, which came from Scotland in the 18th century, which meant that you didn't take everything on trust, that you asked questions and found your answers through a proper process of education.
Does this mean that compassion is our greatest strength?
Housed in the 19th century servants' wing of Sudbury Hall, the National Trust's Museum of Childhood is all about play. Originally opened in 1974, it holds collections of national significance, including the Betty Cadbury collection of Plaything Past. It reopened in 2008 following a 2-year rejuvenation project, and now offers a bigger, better, more engaging and enjoyable museum for all ages, interests and abilities.
Focus of the museum is childhood, and basically the museum tells lots of stories, but mainly based on 7 themes, about elements of childhood, going back to the Victorian period and right up to the present day. So really it captures stories that are interesting for all age groups.
You walk around and you see something that just sparks a memory from your own childhood. I mean, for me it was memories of Cindy dolls, playing with Cindy dolls, or Jacks, you know, something I haven't thought about for 30 years probably or more. And I know for, you know, my colleagues it was something else would spark a memory. So you can see that's the kind of the fantastic thing about this place.
What we've done now is absolutely remarkable, because the old Museum of Childhood was very popular and people did love it and they did make repeat visits. I think there must be lots of things in this museum that capture people's attention, imagination and their memories from their own childhood and make them want to come back and find other things to bring back more memories.
In an elegant setting by the River Thames, Orleans House Gallery provides a vibrant home for heritage, arts and learning. Following the culmination of a significant Heritage Lottery-funded development project in 2008, the gallery is now a thriving community hub for creativity and education. This transformation has enabled the gallery to realise the potential of its whole site, bringing decaying buildings into use to provide inspirational new gallery and education spaces, and opening up new areas of the gardens. The gallery buildings include the Octagon Room, designed by James Gibb in 1720.
Our founder, Nellie Ondies, actually saved the Octagon Room and the rest of the buildings and the stables for the kind of nation. It was also linked to the view from Richmond Hill, because this is in the vista of the Richmond Hill, which is the only protected view in England.
Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've fundamentally changed the site. The disused buildings that were falling into disrepair have now been refurbished and transformed. So the Coach House Education Centre is now situated at the back with adjoining office spaces, workshops, toilets for the public, and the last phase comprised refurbishing the Stables Gallery and in addition opening up the cafe
there really wasn't a robust education provision going on. So we used to have to do workshops actually in here in the Octagon Room. It was the only space we had for school visits. So it was very limiting in terms of kind of practical activities and the kind of activities you've seen today.
So we've seen, for example, some of the art that they've been doing with kids who are perhaps having difficulty at school, but they're finding ways to express themselves through the art here. It's a lovely exhibition here, which is by two artists in residence who are working with another group of kids just outside, who are obviously completely fired up.
I think the learning experience of having somebody as wonderful as the artist working alongside the children is just absolutely phenomenal. And it's something that perhaps in school we're not able to provide, and then to come out in the outdoors and in the open and come down to the gallery, it is just a fantastic experience.
They look forward to it, do they?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Set in a dramatic Victorian Gothic building on the site of the medieval Reading Abbey, the Museum of Reading's 100,000 visitors come to see some of the 400,000 objects in the museum's collections, ranging from ancient Greek pots to stags. As well as caring for artefacts from all over the world, the museum now collects objects that have links with Reading and its people. The Museum of Reading operates Britain's largest and oldest loan service. Outside the Box has been a 4-year project supported by the Heritage Lottery Fund, which has revitalised and extended the service and developed it into a unique partnership with over 20 museums and heritage organisations across Berkshire and Buckinghamshire.
4 years ago we were very happy to be awarded nearly £100,000 from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and that was to really revitalise, revamp and relaunch our fantastic service to develop our 1,500 boxes of museum objects.
Is this a beehive?
Looks like one, doesn't it? It's a big seed pod.
Schools and care homes and community groups could have objects, mini museums really, are things that wouldn't perhaps be in store if they weren't in the boxes, could go out and be used and touched and handled and to learn from them in the classroom.
Well, this is one I was really looking forward to seeing because I think it's a really kind of charming idea, and I like the way it's been going quite a long time. And for me, as an object maker myself, I am a great believer in the sort of evocative power of the actual thing, and the fact that this is a service that offers people the opportunity to actually touch and handle and feel the texture. I think it's a really interesting scheme, and it's beautifully presented, and I like the fact that it also extends into their sort of memory box idea, which, for old people, because if you think about how evocative it is when you handle an object from your own past, that's sort of like it's like psychological archaeology.
The National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh tells the story of Scotland to the world, and in its international collections shows the world to Scotland. Its new permanent exhibition, Scotland, a Changing Nation, which opened in July 2008, is a thought-provoking gallery about Scotland's recent past, its present and future. It explores a changing nation through the lives of ordinary and extraordinary Scots, from the First World War to the present day.
The exhibition is really about Scotland in the past century and about the changing experiences of people in Scotland in that time. And if there's one thing that really sums up the gallery, it's the voices of the people of Scotland, past and present. Well, the exhibition covers a huge area, and it covers over a century in time, and we couldn't possibly try and be comprehensive in the space we had available. So what we've done is actually condense the past century of the Scottish experience into a number of themes. And the gallery actually starts off with one of the most important themes of Scottish history in the past century, which is war. The two world wars had a huge impact on Scotland and its people. And around the rest of the gallery we look at areas like industry and how Scotland has moved from being a nation of heavy industry to a nation where financial services, where microelectronics are important, the service industries are important. And we also look at the experience of leaving Scotland. People have emigrated from Scotland for several centuries, but the 20th century was when actually huge numbers left for other countries such as Canada and Australia. And finally, we look at how the politics of Scotland has changed, how at various times over the past century there have been thoughts about independence, about thoughts about should Scotland govern itself, and we take that story right up to debates on the present day.
In 2008, the Ruth and Crafts Centre opened a stunning new building designed by Surges and Bates Architects, which underlines its role as the most important centre for the presentation and promotion of contemporary crafts in Wales. The new Ruth and Crafts Centre is a contemporary masterpiece inspired by the landscape that surrounds it. 3 new galleries have been specially designed to display craft, thus works from major collections are shown to their best advantage, alongside some of the most innovative applied art being made by Welsh, UK and international artists today.
In July last year, we opened the new Ruth and Crafts Centre. We've been going for 25 years and touring exhibitions all over the UK and abroad, and representing contemporary craftspeople and bringing craft into the UK from abroad. The building is very contemporary, but it has an innate sense of place. It belongs where it is. It's inspired by the hill line of the Clwydian Hills. We're in the middle of the Vale here. So the building has a handcrafted feel and a handmade feel, although it's very modern and very contemporary. And that reflects very much what we do, which is to show contemporary craft by individual artist makers from all over the UK and beyond. In the main gallery spaces, we show artists of an international standing, and by artists, I would say makers. They're people who have an innate understanding of materials.
It's a nice space to work in. It's got, it's got good light. I like these big windows, and I don't know. It's just got quite a positive feel to it. There's a lot of ideas going on. That's quite stimulating,
One of the underlying themes of what we do here is to try and make a living for applied artists, and that's by promoting their work, creating educational opportunities, helping place their work in collections, and selling it.
The Rotunda, originally opened in 1829, is one of the oldest surviving purpose-built museums in the country. Following a £4.5 million redevelopment, the museum's 3 main gallery spaces now tell the story of the role Scarborough played in the history of geology and how the science is just as important today. The Rotunda Gallery, containing the original 1850s showcases, tells the story of the birth of geology, celebrating the life of William Strata Smith, the father of English geology.
I suppose the link's in the name. It's a museum of geology, but it tells a story from a time when geology was not a separate science. So really this is a museum of natural sciences and of one man who helped discover things that still underpin an awful lot of what we do. Smith created a geological map. That was the first time that had been done. His ideas were plagiarised immediately by the great and the good in London. And Smith, who had a fairly lowly background, lost out in a big way. But the map, which we have reproduced downstairs, is by anybody's estimation a glorious piece of artwork and a very significant discovery. That understanding is still what underpins most of the geological work these days, and it's proved a really wonderful tool to be adapted for the museum. So we have a 21st century variety of it on the 3D interactive in this gallery, where you can sort of fly over the landscape of Britain with the map underneath you as a sort of 3-dimensional representation. Obviously it's a very small space, and it's in 3 main areas. Those 3 areas really respond best to different age groups, different types of visitors. So the Dinosaur Coast Gallery, which is a colourful gallery with lots of activities and things for children to do, is the real aim of that gallery is that people should get out onto the coast and explore. The Shell Geology Now gallery is much more electronic type interactives, but it focuses around some absolutely key objects. The first one that people notice as they come in is the skeleton of Gristhorpe Man. Now, he was excavated in the 1840s and has actually been on display almost continuously since then. But there's also the skeleton of the plesiosaur in there, and that's a very recent discovery, the last 6 or 7 years, found just on the coast down at Speeton. There's also dinosaur footprints in there. So that's the sort of the hard and fast geology. And the third space is the one we're in now, the Rotunda Gallery. This, of course, was the original. This is the bit that existed in 1829 when the museum first opened. And this has an appeal across the ages, there's no doubt about it. But in actual fact, because it's such a glorious sort of encapsulation of the Philosophical Society in the 1820s, I guess it appeals to people who want to be self-directed. We don't have interactives up here, it's quite a quiet space, and there's just so much to look at and read, and this is the gallery that people come back to again and again.
The new Sackler Centre for Arts Education is the V&A's Centre for Learning through Creative Design. Working with creative professionals, universities and others, the museum helps young people and adults think about their design choices as consumers and encourages visitors to develop skills in design practice, from digital media and advertising to fashion and home decoration, either for pleasure or as a step towards a career.
We started off deciding really as an organisation that this was to be about creative design. And that was a brilliant focus to take because it took, first of all, the museum's central purpose, which is design, and it also gave a wonderful kind of direction for our work with the public, which was around creativity. And so that meant that what we were really doing was trying to foster understanding of design, but actually also practice of it as well. And you don't have to be a great name designer to do some design for yourself. And there's loads of people actually customise their clothes or do other things about decorating their houses or whatever that are about practicing design. And we think that we can expand the possibilities for huge numbers of people through the centre in doing that. So we've got a practical art studio, which is wonderful. We've also got a design studio, which can be used for all sorts of design teaching courses and classes. And then I suppose one of the really unusual things is that we've got a digital studio as well. And we're certainly one of the first museums in the country and one of the first in the world to have a really fully equipped digital studio. A lot of the upper floor of the centre, this auditorium here, the two seminar rooms, are more to do with debate, discussion, appreciation, sort of thinking about art and design and the performing arts. But on the upper floor we also have, again, two things we're really, really proud of, really, which is two practitioner-in-residence studios. We were very keen that although this is an education centre, it shouldn't look like a school or a college. You should feel from the moment you come in that you've come to a museum, and particularly a museum of design. So one of the ways in which we did that was to make sure that we had some works of art around in the spaces. We wanted people to learn about design through experiencing it.
What was nice for me is clearly the organisers were thrilled. It hits, not only did the museum hit our buttons, the prize hit all their buttons. So I feel marginally heroic at the moment. I'll get over it tomorrow, I promise.